Hello, welcome back everybody. Here's another episode for you. Now, I'm a huge proponent of getting straight to the point, and I hate clickbait. So, per our title, here's what this video is, just to set the expectation out. I'm going to show you guys how to make money from scrap, specifically scrap wood, in the form of making cutting boards. Now, you can make these and sell them for a profit, or, like I do oftentimes, I give them away during the holidays or for special occasions, birthdays, weddings, whichever, and it ultimately ends up saving you money that way because you're not having to go out and buy a gift. Plus, it's something that's handmade, beautifully crafted, and it usually goes to someone who will appreciate that. So that is what this video is about. We're going to be taking scrap wood and making it into cutting boards. Now, let's dive right on in. So one of the perks of the job for me is leftover material, and oftentimes I save it and hoard it and stack it until I have a use or I need to burn it all off in a project. So what we're looking at here is 4/4 surfaced mahogany that I had off of a trim job in Nashville, and essentially it's surfaced SAS, surfaced all sides. I have it ripped down to different widths, but really all I'm concerned about here is the flat sawn grain, meaning the top and bottom of the widest parts of the board, not the edge grain, because the top and bottom of the board is going to become our contact surface. Now, something I want to say for this is that I'm going to be ripping these down to 1.25 and 1.125. That means my width of the boards I will be ripping to 1 1/8 inch to 1/4. That will give us enough thickness for this cutting board. Per usual, we're going to go ahead, set up your table saw, set up your fence, make sure that it is accurate so you're not having to overplane or over sand something on the back end, and you're saving a lot more material by not getting greedy on your cuts. Now, one of the downsides about running a trim job is that you often have kill nails or a board that gets pulled out and you have nails. So please, always before you run anything through any machinery, especially your table saw or planer, please denail. I find that 16 gaugers pop out a lot easier than 18 gauge. Unfortunately, here is 18 gauge, and you can see they get a little warm when you bend them and they snap. Now I'm going to run things through the table saw. Obviously, or hopefully you guys know what a table saw looks like and works like. You can see our other video. This is my particularly favorite table saw. And I'm just going to start ripping up these strips, as many as I can, to start getting the stock for my cutting boards. Alright, so here what we're looking at, I have two different stacks of lumber. I have long-ish lengths, and then I have my next set of lengths as well. And essentially, I'm just going to organize them in two different size sections, and my goal here is to get 2 cutting boards per glue up. So if I want a 20-inch long cutting board, hopefully my scrap blanks are at least 40 inches. Now remember, here in this scenario, you need to make sure that these glue ups are stacked on the linear grain, meaning linear grain side up. So if this was the position of our board originally, once we cut them, remember how they were stacked, and then we're going to flip them like this. So the flat sawn, the original, what you would consider top or bottom of the board, is now our edge for this glue surface. Alright, now there's everything sitting up on the linear grain. I got it mapped out, and all I'm going to do is essentially rotate these down and get them in position for my glue up. Alright, there's my glue. Now, you guys can comment all day you want. Oh my god, he used too much glue. Oh my god, he didn't use enough glue. That's not the argument here of the battle. I wanted to show you guys the average amount that I use on most cutting boards. I would rather overkill my glue because it's cheaper than getting a callback. Cleaning up a little extra glue or having wasted an extra 8% of the glue that cost me $6 per bottle or $11 per bottle is cheaper than sending a board out, especially to a client, and having a callback for an improper joint or a check. Now in this particular section, this is showing you what I think probably would be overkill, but I'm doing it just in case so you can see the amount of squeeze out. So if you're ever questioning the porosity of your wood or how much glue is enough, I want you to really pay attention to this part of the video. I put on that extra layer just to show you what might be a little too much. My preferred tool for spreading glue is a spackle knife or whatever scrap block of wood is near me, roughly the size of the pieces I'm gluing up. Example, 1.25 inch glue up board. I'm going to go ahead and get 1.5 inch piece of scrap wood. Alright, so now I laid in my clamps and I loosely tightened my pony clamps. Big fan of the pony 3/4 inch pipe clamps. I think they just have superior pressure and gripping strength. I also think their longevity is a lot better than the Bessie clamps. Alright, something to talk about here at this point in the glue up. I am reversing the direction of my clamps, meaning my outside 2 clamps are going to be underneath and my inside 2 are going to be overhead. Now it's important to clean up. There's all the extra squeeze out you can see. Quite a bit of excess glue. Water and a rag. That's all you need. Clean it up, wipe it down, let it go. Please keep in mind that if you have clamps on the bottom of your board and water touches them, it will oxidize the wood and impart a very dark and deep color that's hard to get out. Alright, and one thing I wanted to add here is obviously the finished product in this video is made of walnut and red oak. Red oak is not a commonly used piece of lumber in cutting boards only because it's specifically more open grained. That does not mean you cannot use it in cutting boards. And secondly, although I was showcasing the mahogany in this video, I started shooting this process before I pulled off of that job, and the scraps that I had was walnut and red oak from a job for my neighbor, and these ended up being their Christmas gifts. Alright, the next step is dimensioning your boards. You can use a variety of methods here. If you have a sliding miter saw that's big enough to hit that gap and flip it, table saw, my particular method of choice is the Makita track saw on the Festool track. I'm not sponsored by either of these companies, and I would love to do a video on these tools and the combination of these two tools in a little bit, but this is a very fast method. No, I do not use clamps when I'm doing something like this. I can explain that in my track saw tips and tricks video that I'll be doing in a couple of weeks. Now we get on to sanding. I use the Rotex 150 EQ or EQ 150. This thing is an absolute monster of a sander, especially on grind mode. Now I'm not going to bore you with footage of just me sanding, but what I will say in this video, here's the pattern I use. Grind, 40 grit, no grind, 40 grit. Grind 80, non-grind 80. Grind 150, non-grind 150. Essentially, I'm just rotating. Every time I hit a grit and it's on grind mode, I'm going to hit that same grit not on grind mode. Then, the very last pass, I'm going to turn my dust collection. I'm going to turn the suction down 50% to help burnish it, and it really helps eliminate the pigtails that might impart in your wood. Now, if you're getting oscillating pigtails when you're doing this, you're either skipping a step in your grit, or you're only using the grind mode operation and not giving the sandpaper enough time to actually work without applying pressure. So again, whatever grits you use, I start in grind and I go to non-grind. When I step up, I repeat the process over and over until I get a finish that I'm looking forward to. Alright, so once I finish with the 80 non-grind mode, I step it up to 150 grind. I release the grind mode, and then I raise the grain simply with water and a rag. Don't go crazy. Don't dunk the boards in water. Simply splash a little bit of water with a rag, and it's going to raise the grain, the top layer of that cell, and then your sanding, your last pass sanding is going to cut that top cell back off and give it an incredibly nice finish. Again, having a 150 look almost more like a 180. Now, what grit do I take my sanding to? 150. Why? I'm not here to show off and showcase this beautiful cutting board because all cutting boards, in my opinion, are built to be used and abused. So I take mine to 150 after taking it off grind mode on half suction dust collection, and then I oil it. I did have this little bit of punky spot in the walnut, and my preferred method for filling is epoxy. I didn't have any epoxy on hand for this hole, so I actually used CA glue, contact adhesive, aka super glue, and a little bit of sawdust. The best way to get sawdust for me is I actually pull my hose out of the Festool at the base and just knock it on the board, and I find you get the best, finest dust of the most recent color you've been sanding. Warning, do not stand over the super glue and sawdust pile when you're doing this. It fumigates something awful and it will mess you up. All right. Finally, the oil. Guys, I use Boost Block. I think it's Boost Mystery Oil. But if I'm in a bind or a pinch and I don't want to spend the money or wait on Amazon, straight mineral oil from Walgreens or any pharmacy or even the grocery store will do. Again, 100% mineral oil. I think it's made for the babies. Non-toxic. And it's like $5 for a can that'll probably get you 10 cutting boards in. So I apply the oil, I let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then I buff it off with a dry rag, and then it's ready for delivery. So what's the deal? Can you really make money selling cutting boards? I would not bet my life savings that it would become a stable job all on its own. However, it's a great side gig for revenue, or like I said, putting together gifts for friends and family, maybe even clients. What's nicer than after building someone custom kitchen countertops out of walnut to give them a corresponding walnut cutting board left over with the scrap material. Plus, you're not paying on square footage and storage on the material or letting it go to rot if it's in your backyard. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I've been in that situation. It's also good practice for alternative joining methods. Like I said here, we didn't use a planer, we didn't use a joiner in this video, and it was simply a table saw, track saw, and a sander on a dust collection system. So I could have made these cutting boards literally anywhere except for underwater or in outer space. Someone's going to catch me on that. But I could have made it in a lot of different places. All I'm getting at, as a carpenter, when you have leftover materials and you have no place to store them, think logically about how you want to reinvest in your own company. Even if it is simply 15 to 20 boards of something you could use for a cutting board or a glue up for a project, a little tabletop. You know, you could have kept going with these glue ups and made them bigger in sections for tabletops. Constantly reinvest in your business while minimizing your overhead, and I've really tried to be strategic about that as a pack-out carpenter, because if I did 10 of those jobs a year where I used that amount of mahogany, I would need a 2,000 square foot warehouse. And it's not because of overbuy or overkill, it's because of cut yields. Sometimes you just can't avoid getting a bad rip on your table saw and having a kill board that leaves you with 20, maybe even unfortunately 30% waste. So don't let it go to waste. Don't let the money sit around. Turn your scraps into something profitable. At the very, very least, at the end of the day, you and yours can have a brand new cutting board. Guys, if you liked what you watched here today, do me a favor, hammer down that like button, and please subscribe, because we want to keep bringing you content. Check out our other videos. As always, we hope you're doing what you love, and wherever you are, whatever time it is, from our shop to yours, see you later.